Okay. Let's share that screen. Okay, everybody. So let's start with this. Happy New Year. Okay. It's nice to see you guys virtually. Before we get into too many details here, I'm here to help, right? Oh, just going to admit another person. I'm here to help you guys. So let's get through this week together. I want to give you a quick framework of what the week's going to look like, and we'll go from there. Sorry, I'm just going to make one more attendance change. Okay. So here's some facts. Everything I'm going to go over with you guys about this week is already posted on our website. Not on our class website, but on the main website. If you just go to mrwalks.wordpress.com, that's where I'm putting everything. And that's where I might recommend, if you guys had trouble getting on Teams today, that's where the link is every day this week. If you want to get on Teams to this class, just go to the link right on my main page. It'll connect you right to this Teams meeting easily. The other thing is, you should have received an email from me last week, which also had the link in it. And the link to a survey. That survey is also on my main page right there. So you can also see that survey there. Some of you have done it and some of you haven't. So if you hadn't had a chance to do the survey yet, please try to do that today. The point of the survey is just to make sure you're technically ready for remote learning. And if so, I can anticipate and help with any sort of technical problems that might come up. Okay, so that's the first thing. Link to Teams is always on my main page, and that survey is something you guys are going to get to. Okay, so here's how this week's going to go with you guys. So it's a Monday to Friday, 2 o'clock to 2:50 every day. So a 50-minute class. Yes, I do attendance, as was outlined with you, the letter that went home to you guys for all your classes. Yes, I'm going to be recording the classes. I'm not recording yet, but I'm going to be recording the classes so that if you miss, or when we do the stuff we're going to go over that we're going to do, you want to go back and review it, the recording will be on our website, so you can just go back and look at the recording. Okay. Now, what are we going to do this week? Well, we're going to do basically an adaptation of what we were going to do anyways this week, which was to work on these programming extras content. So actually, I think it's going to be a lot of fun doing this week. It's something I was excited for before we went to winter break, and I'm excited to do it even though we were doing it remotely. So we're going to be doing those programming extras examples all week. Now, what should that mean you guys can do? Best, excuse me, best case scenario, absolutely, you should be doing these along with me at home. Now, I say that, but that might present some challenges for some of you, okay? Challenges like the technical part. That's what the survey was for. That's why you should have done it last week to kind of get prepared for this. But it might be a bit of a challenge to get all the software and the hardware and everything running at home to be able to do the example along with me at home. That's a challenge, I get that. Challenge number 2, when I go over this example, it's not like in class where you can just quickly say, oh, Mr. Wux, I need help. I got a bug in my code. Mr. Wux, can you slow down a little bit? It's a little different over Teams. And so it's harder for you to maybe follow along at the same pace I'm going through the example. I get that. And that's why I'm recording the class, so that later you can go back and look at the recording and go through it at your own pace. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, if he's recording it anyways, why do I even need to do these extras examples? And I get that. I get that that's a position some of you would take. But I would say that's a terrible way to learn this stuff. If you actually wanted to learn how to do these graphics and these programming extra stuff and these like gaming type examples we're going to do, the best way to learn computer science is by doing stuff. I mean, you can listen to me all day long through a video or through a recording, or you could read a bunch of PDFs or PowerPoints I give to you. But to be honest, I think although that activates visual learning and auditory learning, it's the idea of kinesthetic learning or learning by actions or by doing that to me is the number one way to learn computer science. You're not going to learn it by just listening to me. You're going to learn it by actually doing it. And that's why I would recommend engaging in the example at some level with me, right? Even if you fall behind a little bit, you can always catch up later. And this is the other thing I'm going to say. I'm going to back this up to first slide right here. I am super optimistic that you guys are all going to be sitting back in those chairs 1 week from now. 1 week from today, I am optimistic that you guys are going to be back here in the classroom. Remote learning is going to be over. I'm so optimistic, in fact, that I'm just going to always say that my language, I'm going to manifest that to you guys. I'm going to just basically say when you guys are back next week, when you guys are back next week. If that obviously changes, then we'll sort of deal with that when it comes up. But I'm going to be very confident that I'm going to see you guys in those chairs a week from now. So if you don't get a chance to completely do the extras example this week, you can also catch up on it next week as you're working on your final projects. Okay. So what are my expectations for this week? Number one, complete the survey. The survey was sent out last week. If you haven't done it yet, do it today, do it tonight, but get that survey done so I know what I'm dealing with in terms of what kind of setup you have at home. 2, log in to this Teams meeting every day. You've already shown you can do that already. So that's an easy one. That one's already done for you guys. Keep doing that all week. 3, participate. As I just mentioned, this example will be more relevant to you if you actually do it along with me. Not just, put on this Teams meeting and then go in the other room while it's playing in the background. You'll actually get engaged if you actually do it with me, okay? You learn by doing. And if you have a question, ask. You can type it in the chat. You can turn on your mic and ask. And if you're not really comfortable doing that during this Teams meeting, email me after the meeting or come during the extra help time and I can answer your questions at that point. 4, okay? You're still going to get graded at the end of the semester for this course. So if you have any work that was not completed before winter break from our past units, and I know we made some changes. We got rid of the looping unit test and we made some changes that way. But if you're still working on past work, you need to continue working on that. Now, again, I get there's a challenge there. Maybe your work's here at school. Maybe you don't have the software at home. So maybe you're going to have to deal with that next week. And that's why I like this week is just about these programming extras, right? And then number 5, yes, you can now get started on your final project. Absolutely you can. That was in our original schedule. Actually, let me bring that up for you guys right here. Back in November, we set up this schedule together. The schedule that's on your screen right now was set up with you guys back in November. Okay, we knew that we were going to have a winter break. We knew that the end of the semester was going to come by the end of January, but we kind of worked through this and made adaptations as it went along, and now they've thrown remote learning at us and stuff. So that's going to continue. We're going to make adaptations as we move along, but the schedule's already kind of adapted with us, so we'll just keep going, right? You can see here it's, January 10th, we were going to do programming extras today anyways. There's exactly 16 classes left before the end of this semester. So yeah, there's some realities there, like getting your work done is definitely something that you want to look into, okay? And I get it. There's going to be technical troubles for some of you more than others, but I'm here to help with that, okay? That's what the survey was for. Whew, okay, so I'm going to pause here for a second. Does anyone have any questions before we go further? And I'm just going to double check to make sure attendance is correct. I'm pretty sure everybody's been marked present except for one, and that's the one name I announced, Xavier. Okay. So I'm excited. Let's get started with this programming extras content. It's going to be really cool. Now I'm looking at the time. It's 2:12 p.m. This class ends at 2:50. So we have a little over half an hour to get a good start on this programming extras today. What I want to do is show you guys some of the resources you can tap into to get started, because I realize some of you might be panicking right now. Oh my gosh, I haven't gotten ready for this class. I haven't gotten Visual Studio, blah, 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 blah. So first of all, let's take a look at our class website, mrwalks.wordpress.com. So you're at home, you go to Mr. Walks, like just a quick Google search should get you to my website. You saw this way back in September in this class. So you get to my website. You're on the main page of my website. So you're not yet on the Computer Science 20S page. You're just on my main page. And right here, it says Happy New Year. And right here, as I was mentioning to you before, is the link to the Teams meeting. I just realized I'm going to start the recording now of this class. Oh, wait. I already have started the recording of this class. Let me just double check. Oh yeah, I already have. So no worries. I've already started the recording. Okay, so there it is. There's that link to the 20S Teams meeting. If you need extra help, by the way, right underneath it is the link that will start at 3 o'clock every day. If you want to connect with me over Teams at 3 o'clock, I'll just be on Teams of my radio playing, but just interrupt me and let me know what I can do to help, just like it would be if we were in class regularly. Now, if you scroll a little further down this page, here's the survey. You also got the survey in an email I sent to you guys last week. But if you're having trouble finding it, go to the survey. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole survey with you, but one thing you can see here is if you go through this survey, there's questions like what happens if you have a non-working laptop, right? Well, obviously, you probably wouldn't be even watching this right now, okay? But then there's questions like what type of computer? So if you have a Mac computer, it's going to be more difficult to do, like, it's pretty much impossible to do the extra stuff. Well, I don't want to say impossible because I have anticipated this, and I do this through the InformNet course that I teach online. It's just that with the Mac computer, the software, the Visual Studio software is much older than it is on the PC side, on the Microsoft Windows side. So it doesn't quite work exactly the same way. Now, if you have a Chromebook at home, then again, the only way to really learn the computer science stuff is through a website. And I've anticipated that. So that is a possibility, but I would expect an email from you guys, right? That goes in there. So here you can see if you did say that you have a Mac computer or you have a Chromebook computer, there's a thing here that you can read with some links to resources to kind of look through to see kind of, okay, well, what will this look like if I don't use a PC running Windows, if I can't install Visual Studio here. So I'm not going to read that all to you, but you should read that if you're doing it once you're doing the survey. Now, other things to know, like are you logged into Google at home, right? So that's something we've dealt with in class, and some of you still had trouble getting your Google account set up. Well, and then I logged into Google for you, but now it's time you maybe want to make sure that's done for yourself at home. Okay. What else? Okay. For Computer Science 20S students, there's a section of the survey that talks about Visual Studio to make sure you have Visual Studio up and running. If you've already installed Visual Studio on your home computer and you have it up and running and you've tried it and it works just like it works here at school, great, everything's going to go great. No problem whatsoever. But if the answer is no, then it says you're supposed to skip to question 13, which is this one. Again, has you analyze like some things to try. Like there's a resources page to look at that helps if you're having trouble with the install. It's also on our class help page. There's links to where you can download it. There's a YouTube video that you can watch on how to install it, right? So there's quite a few things there that you can use, right? Some of these questions won't apply to you because they're for Computer Science 30S and 40S students. But that's the survey that I want you guys to make sure you can do so that you're able to actually participate in this stuff. Okay, now I'm going to go to Computer Science 20S, our regular class website. I don't really need it right now. I'll just minimize this and let's get on to working in Visual Studio. So I've already set up a project. It's already set up. It's just, I just called it programming extras, nothing fancy. So what you can do at home is the exact same thing. Just go ahead and set up a project, right? It doesn't have any code in it yet. It doesn't have any design in it yet. It's just a project at this point. Let's shrink this down. Okay, it's just that. Now, when you set up your Visual Studio at home, it might be that it has that look to it. Let me just reset the Windows layout. that looked like the very first time you set up Visual Studio here at school. And since then, you've made some adaptations to Visual Studio. So maybe the little toolbox along the side is still hidden. So just a reminder from back at the beginning of this course, click on Toolbox, and then you can click on the little pin to pin it down if you want. Over on this side, there's this thing called the Solution Explorer, and then underneath it, the Properties window. Now, I used to say, well, you don't need the Solution Explorer, so you can unpin it. You can unpin the Solution Explorer or even close it. But in this Programming Extras, you might actually need it. So my recommendation is you actually should open the Solution Explorer and pin it down. Now, it doesn't need to be as big. You can adjust the settings here a little bit. So the Solution Explorer up here is visible and the Properties window is visible. Now, it's not totally necessary to have the Solution Explorer open, but I'll kind of show you why as we get into these Programming Extras. All right, I'm going to take a piece of orange. Pausing now. If anyone has any questions, write them in the chat or turn on your mic and ask them. All right, let's get into it then. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Oops. We're going to take this form. We're going to make a couple property changes to it. So the form itself, the property change we're going to make is the one, if you scroll up under F, form border style. So form border style. We're going to set it to none. So it has no border. It looks like that. Okay. We're also going to change the one at the bottom called startup position to center screen. Starts in the center of the screen with no border. And I don't care what shape you make it. You can make it as big and small as you want. That doesn't matter to me. And then I want you to put one label on your design. So add a label to your design. Now, hopefully, at this point in the course, having done all the units up to this point, this is going to go really fast for you because you've been doing designs now for quite a while. So this is not a big deal at all. Now, into that label, I want you to change the text to say something like, welcome to the media player. And I'm actually going to call mine the Walks media player. You might just call yours the whatever, the Jones media player, whatever you're happy with. Okay. Then I want you to change the font to whatever font you want. I don't care. But my advice would be just make it a little bit bigger. So it's a little bit bigger and maybe a little bit bolder. Right? Welcome to the Walks media player. If you are finding your label like mine is stretching off the screen, some of you should know what to do for this. There's a property of the label called auto size, which is by default set to true. Set it to false. Then what you can do is just stretch out your label and the text always just fits inside of it. If you want your text centered in the label, then go down to the property called text align, and you can just click on the little diagram here, and I'm going to put mine right in the center by just clicking that little button there. And then I know my text is nice and centered inside that label. But to be honest, that doesn't matter. This isn't a design assignment. So all I want is a label with text inside of it. Okay, that's it. If you want to pretty it up in your own way, that's great, right? But basically what I did is I put a label and I set text align to middle center and I set auto size to false. With my form, I set the start position to center screen and the form border style to none. That's all I've done so far. Okay, none of that is new yet. We've done this before. If you were to run this right now, and I don't recommend that you do because it's not really going to do anything, but if you were, all it's going to do is what you see right here. It's just going to make a form in the center of the screen with no border and your text on there. Now, there's no way to stop it because we got rid of the border, so there's no X. So I'd have to go back here and actually hit the stop button in Visual Studio. Now, that's actually going to be important that you know where that stop button is, because at different parts of this example, we might need it. So that's the stop button, and you probably would have learned that button as well back in the looping unit, because sometimes if you get stuck in an endless loop, that's the way you stop. Okay, none of that is new yet, but we're about to do our first new design item. It comes from the toolbox. So we've been using a whole bunch of stuff in this toolbox. We've been using buttons and checkboxes, even combo boxes at this point. We've been using some of this stuff. Now, some of it we haven't. We haven't, for example, used this thing or this thing, and we're not going to use those. But what I want you guys to look for in this toolbox isn't in the common controls. You won't find it in there. So you have two choices. One, you can search for it. Or two, instead of common controls, you might want to look under all Windows forms right here. This. Since we're getting into some of these programming extras, now maybe it's time to open that one up. All Windows forms, which gives you a lot more stuff. And what we're going to do is scroll down to T, because we're going to find this thing called a timer. Notice the little icon for timer looks like a stopwatch, and that's on purpose, right? That's what it does. When you take the timer and put it on your design, you won't see it. The timer is an invisible object, but where it will appear is right here, down here, timer. Timers work very much like loops. Now we've finished loops. So in other words, it's going to keep your code running over and over and over again until we stop. But unlike the loop, which runs your code as fast as it can, a timer works on actual time. So the timer, you can control how fast or how slow the loop is occurring. So when you look at a timer down here and you select it over here in the properties window, timer, it doesn't have very many properties. There's only a few properties. Some of them we don't even need. We don't need this one called generate member. Who cares? We don't need this one called modifier or the one called tag. We don't need those properties. Now, name, we already know what that is. That's just the name we give our timer. So let's start by changing that. Let's change the name of our timer. Let's give it a 3-letter. I'm going to use TMR for timer. You might want to use TIM. That works too. And I'm just going to call this one colors. You'll see why in a bit. So this is a timer that's going to affect colors. You can put a U on that if you really want to. Okay, like I said, we don't need this one. We don't need this one. We don't need this one. And we've already changed the name. Now, what about this one, enabled? All that means is the timer running or not? So right now it's not. The timer isn't on. If we switch it to true, then the timer's on. But we can also do that in our code. We can tell our code to take the timer and say enabled equals false, enabled equals true. Just like we were said, visible equals false, visible equals true. So let's turn the timer on. Set it to true. Power tip, double click, and it just toggles between true and false. Okay. So that one's done. That one's done. This one doesn't matter. This one and this one don't matter. What's interval? Well, interval is the actual time. The time between, like in a loop, between time, each time the loop would occur. So we don't write a loop in a timer. A timer is a loop. So basically it's saying, how often should I run the code you're going to give me? And the interval is measured in milliseconds, not seconds, but milliseconds. There's 1,000 milliseconds in 1 second of real time. So what I want you to type there is the number 1,000. That means 1 second. So that means that this timer is going to try to run code every 1 second. Okay? All right. Now, what I want you to do, double click your timer. Just like you would a button, double click it. And we're going to add code to this timer. Okay, so I'm just going to hide these just so I can make the code bigger for you guys. So here you can see it says every time this timer ticks, which right now means every 1 second, what should I do? So I'm just going to put a comment here, okay? The timer runs like a loop in this code over and over again. So it just keeps running the code over and over again, okay? While the enabled property is set to true. Actually, I won't put quotes on that. It runs based on time in milliseconds. 1 second of real time equals 1,000 milliseconds. Okay? But 1 second of real time is 1,000 milliseconds. I'm just going to copy and paste that. So 2 seconds of real time would be 2,000 milliseconds. Okay? 10 seconds would be 10,000 milliseconds. Okay? So you get the idea. But we can also get much faster than a second, right? So a half a second of real time, 500 milliseconds. So you get the idea. A timer you can control with time, okay? Right now it's set to 1 second, okay? So every 1 second of time, it's going to do something. All right, so let's get it to do something. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to create a random generator and create random colors. If you did looping problem 3, you've already done this code. You've done this code before, but we're going to do it again. Random, new, bracket, semicolon. The line of code we did in looping example 2. This is a line of code you would have done in your looping assignments if you had done them up to problem 3 and 4. Actually, you would have done it in the last unit too. Okay. Now, before we go any further, this is actually the very first line of code we've written here in 2022. Everything else has been a comment to this point, and everything else before that was just design work to this point. So I also now want to address, for those students who might be actually trying to follow this along with me right now, which I hope is everyone, but can't type as fast as me, and I'm no great typist, and you're worried, how am I going to get this code done? Or let's say you have a little bug. Let's say you forgot these 2 curly brackets right here. So where can I get this code so that I can move forward? Even so, I'm going to tell you that by the end of the period today, or by tomorrow's class, I'm going to show you a place where you can go on my website and grab this code and copy and paste it over into your example if you need to. Okay, but let's get a little more code done first. Let's create 3 variables for the 3 colors. Okay, we've been making variables before, so this really isn't that hard. Int red equals random dot next between 0, and 256. That's how many possible combinations of red we can generate. That amount of red. Now let's make green. Yes, is your friend. So now I'm going to generate an amount of green color between 0 and 256. And then one more, some blue. Red, green, and blue are going to be generated. And now we're going to assign values to the background color of our current form. We have this form that we've been building. Let's use it and change the colors. So here's the code. This is a special keyword that means this form. Again, you would have seen that if you had done the looping example 2, which we did before winter break, and if you did looping problem 3, which uses this. This dot background color, the back color, equals capital C color dot from ARGB red, comma, green, comma, blue. Okay, this is the line of code. From ARGB just means from a RGB color, from a red, green, blue color. That's what it's essentially trying to say. Create a color from a red, green, blue color. Here are the red, green, and blue colors. All right, time for a test. So what's going to happen, hopefully, is every 1 second, these 5 lines of code are going to run. It's going to generate random colors every 1 second. So let's see what happens. There it is. Every 1 second, I'm seeing random colors. That's awesome. This little piece of code you've seen so far using a timer can automatically be put on pretty much any final project. You could have a little background color changer. What we're actually going to do is use this as the first form and then move to another form. So this is like what you might call a splash screen. Like just it's showing this and then it's going to move on. So this is a really easy way to get some marks for your final project using a little more advanced code with very little effort. Okay, so if you were testing this, you're going to have to use the stop button to stop it. For now, we're going to change that. Now, if you like, you can adjust the timer, right? You can go back to your properties window, back to interval, and change that if you want. So for example, if you want that color changing faster, I could put 500 here, which is every half second, or I could put 250, which is every quarter of a second. So now if I run it every quarter second, it's going to change the color. That's a little more flashy, so to speak. Okay. Now what I want you guys to do is I want you to add a second timer. So we added one timer, go ahead and add another timer. Open up your properties window, name it TMR change. We're going to change something with this timer. Set it enabled. Set your interval to 3000. So TMR change, enabled true, interval 3000 or 3 seconds. Okay. Okay, now remember, this is a second timer. You can have many timers running at once. So you can have one timer, for example, changing colors of one thing. You can have another timer changing the colors of something else. You can have as many timers as you want. They'll all run independently of one another, all doing their own thing. So our first timer is running every quarter of a second. This timer waits for 3 seconds before it starts. Okay, let's double click our other timer now. Okay, let's add some code. Oops. Okay, so this time waits 3 seconds, then runs this code. It's going to wait for 3 seconds and then run the code we're about to do. Now, what code are we going to do? Well, what I want to first do is I want to shut off the other timer. So the one that's changing colors, I'm going to turn it off. So to do that, TMR colors, that's the name of the timer, dot enabled equals false. So I can turn it off. So you don't need to test this, but I'll just show you. It's going to be changing it, but after 3 seconds, stops. right? That's how easy it is to turn off a timer. Okay, but now we're going to get into something interesting. We're going to hide current form. Okay, now what do I mean by that? We're going to make it, put this in quotes, disappear. Okay, now there is a couple different ways to do this, but I'm going to show you the way I'm going to do it is this form dot, and actually there's actually code called this dot hide, and you can put the two curly brackets there. Now another way to do that is you can say this dot visible equals false. You've already learned that code from way back in one of our first units to make pictures visible and invisible. But now we're dealing with a whole form. So I think it's better to use the other code. Plus it's new, right? This dot hide. So now after 3 seconds, the form will disappear. Not only will the timer shut off, the form disappears. But believe it or not, it's still running. The form is still running in the background. It's invisible, but it's running. That's why we're going to need to use the stop button to turn off our program. Okay? And the reason we're doing this is we're now going to shift over to our second form. We're going to make another form. Okay? Make a new form or another form. You go up to up here, project, and then you can see up here, add form. It's right at the top. Project, add form. So I'm going to just put that in our comment. You go to project, add form. Or go to. So let's do that. Project, add form. I know it says Windows Forms, but that's what it is. So we're going to add this form to our project. Okay, this screen comes up. You really don't need to do anything to this screen because it's already set for you. It's going to add a form. It's going to name it Form 2. That's a good name. So let's just click Add. And there it is. We now have a Form 1 with a design and a Form 2 with a design. You will now also notice in the Solution Explorer, there's 2 forms here now, whereas before there was just one. Now there are 2 forms here, Form 1, Form 2. And yes, you can name your forms, of course you can, but for simplicity's sake on this example, we're not going to bother with it. Now, I don't want to do any design to it yet. We'll get to it in a minute. Okay? Just going to move these little tabs around. Be careful when you move tabs around. They can be tricky. Okay. So that's how you add a second form. And now you can add a third form or a fourth form. And again, this might be useful for your final project. You don't have to design everything on one form. You can go from one to the other. All right, so how do we jump our code over? Here's how. You say form, oops, 2. Form 2 equals new form 2. This is very much like random equals new random. Important things to note. Capital F here and here. But lowercase f. Also notice the 2 round brackets right here. That's how the line of code is going to work. Okay. To be honest, you don't have to call this form 2 right here. You could call it just X or potato. It doesn't really matter what you call it. But just to make the line easier to remember, like random equals new random, form 2 equals new form 2. Now that actually doesn't make it appear yet. All this does is it creates a form 2. A second form. And now we're going to show that form. Believe it or Code is, as you might guess, form2, in the lowercase f, form2 dot show. They literally programmed into Visual Studio, show and hide. Those things actually have meaning in here. You can show a form, you can hide a form. So what's now going to happen is it's going to display our little splash screen, and after 3 seconds, boom, the second form appears. Now, notice what's happening? It's going to keep showing form 2s. It's going to keep creating them and showing them. Well, that's cool, but not what we wanted. So there is one other thing to do. We have to turn off this timer, the timer that's going on right now. So TMR change, the one that's changing, dot enabled, also equals false. To turn this timer off as well. That way it only runs once. It waits 3 seconds, runs, which means it switches over to the other form, and then doesn't run anymore. It's over at this point. We're now on to form 2. We can do whatever we want on form 2. Okay. So here's what we've done so far. We set up a project which now has 2 forms, not just 1 form. First form has a couple quick design things, including these 2 new things called timers. In the timers, we added some code and some comments to explain what's going on with this code. And then we have a form 2, which we're going to work on most likely tomorrow because we're almost out of time today. And I actually am going to wrap up in a second here today. We're going to continue with this tomorrow to actually make it play sounds and play videos, which I think is pretty cool. So you can make your own custom sound player and your own custom video player, which again is really cool if you're thinking of something like a video game for your final project and you already have like a video cutscene. This little thing I'm going to show you will actually play the cutscene, and then you can get into the game itself. So, and plus the sounds and stuff that can come out. Even during a video game, you can have sounds come out of your computer. That's going to make things a lot more interesting. So we're going to see how that works tomorrow. To be honest, there isn't very much code at all to write for this. It's a lot of design little tricks we're going to learn tomorrow in this. Okay, but for those of you who are wondering, where can I get this code? I've been trying to follow this, or I haven't installed Visual Studio yet, Mr. Wax, but I'm going to do it maybe later tonight, and I want to get caught up, so I'm going to rewatch the video. But where can I copy and paste some of those comments or some of that code if I'm having trouble? Well, I'm going to show you. So as it's been all through this course, we're going to go to examples, okay? Just like we did in the looping unit and just like we did in the other stuff. I'm going to go to examples. We're going to scroll down to extra content example 1. And now you can see it says see the code here, here, and here. Well, we're not going to need these 2 yet. That's the stuff we're going to work on tomorrow. But if you just look at this first one, see the code here. This is literally where you can copy and paste this code from. And to be honest, it's stuff from last year. So I'm actually going to adapt it. I'm going to add the comments into it here in a second. To do this, I actually have to be logged into GitHub. So watch me here. I'm just going to do this right on GitHub. 20S. So programming extras form 1. And I'm going to edit this file. Okay, so for timer colors, one we did right here. I'm going to take all this code, including the comment, and I'm going to replace what's here. And on timer change, I'm going to do that as well. Okay. There's some other stuff here. I'm not going to worry about that, so we'll leave that alone. And I'm going to commit that. Move that over. So again, here you are as a student. I'm just going to refresh this page. And now you can see you as a student can go in and get that code and copy it and paste it over into your example if you need it. Ooh, kids. Okay. Well, that's going to mark the end of day 1 of remote learning. And I'm excited. I think this is going to be fun this week, going through this example and then the next one, which is a little mini gaming example. So we're going to make this media player that plays sounds and videos. Plus it had this cool splash screen that we already did. And then we're going to do this little mini Pac-Man game where things move around on it. That's probably what we'll get done this week. And if we have time for more, we'll do more. If you have any questions, feel free to stay on Teams and ask me now, or connect during the extra help time, or send me an email. But if you have no more questions, I'm going to say goodbye to you guys, and you can log out today, and I'll see you guys here on Teams tomorrow. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Mr.